Welcome to the Firehorse podcast, where we talk to B2B founders and leaders about their real life experiences and wisdom on building, selling, and scaling businesses, and gain insights into what actually works across sales, marketing, go-to-market strategy, and AI. Today, I'm joined by Josh Kelso, founder and CEO of Cr24, a company helping large banks and financial institutions keep their digital marketing content accurate and compliant at scale through its Aegis platform. Josh, it's great to have you on. Welcome to the Firehorse podcast.
Thanks, Emily. Appreciate the invite. It's great to be here.
You are so welcome. We're happy to have you here. So let's start with the origin story. After spending years in fintech and consumer banking, what was the moment that made you say, this is the problem I'm going to build a company to solve?
So I spent 35 years in financial services and a lot of the big banks, and then left and went into a regional marketing technology service provider, right? And I was the executive to head up the new financial services division. So we were working with a lot of banks like PNC, Citibank, Bank of America, ING Direct, that became Capital One. And we were helping them with a lot of their digital marketing that was very big in the day. It still is. So we were building websites and microsites, doing QR codes. We did a lot of omni-channel things. We did direct mail, bang tails, things like that. But we're very focused on the digital space. We were helping them with new banners because there were a lot of offers and creations and new products that were coming out and rewards programs for credit cards. And what we saw was that banks really struggle from a manual perspective, the process that they go through to release new content out online, either to their existing customers or to the open public. And that actually created a lot of problems. So we had a staff of people that we wanted to serve them doing this all the time, every week. We were doing quite a bit of digital work for them. And typically every time that they pushed new content out online, there were issues. Even though if there's only 10 things you're supposed to change online, those 10 things did change the way you wanted, but sometimes it would affect other parts of the pages or even sub-pages and things like that, or things just got missed through their testing, which is a very manual process. So at the time, the leadership and we looked at the open market to find a software or some type of automation solution so that we could serve our clients better. And out of extensive research, we found that there was nothing. So that's the moment that I said, I can build this thing. Let's do that. So I sold my interest, my partnership in that. And with a few other folks, we went out and set off to build the product. Cr24 was formed. And we went out to build that product to do exactly that thing, to help financial institutions, mainly large institutional banks, from development of content to deployment of content and even beyond, to make sure that it's accurate and do it in an automated fashion so that it's 100% accurate. That it functions and that's rendering correctly in the online digital space. And so that's literally what happened. There was a problem, there's kind of a soft underbelly, and it was a big pain point for banks. I'd been in banking myself years and been experienced in all of that. So that was the moment I said, we can do better than this. We need to automate this in some fashion. And we did.
Amazing. I love it. And I also love the name. Cr24 is the chemical symbol for chromium. What's the story behind that name? And also, how did Aegis come into it as your product name?
So that's interesting. I know I don't get this question a lot, actually, but it was very purposeful why we picked chromium, Cr24. I mean, the company is inspired by the properties of chromium. So that element's known for strength and protection and kind of a polished finish. And these are the same properties and qualities that we operate by, and we deliver value to our clients. So think about chromium, right? It's incredibly strong and durable. That's the type of software that the technology that we build. It's only highly resistant to corrosion, right? So it's very protective. It's a protective coating, right? So, our software is designed to protect our clients from compliance issues, legal issues, errors that are out online. And finally, that it creates luster or shine. And that's kind of what we do for our clients. We elevate their brands and we make sure that their information and content is accurate online and it's represented the way that the bank wants it to be represented, or that it legally has to be. And provides a level of operational excellence that frankly wasn't there before in a manual process. So the elements are kind of why we chose chromium. And really how we got to Cr24 was when we initially looked out to patents and the trademarks and all of that, we found that a lot of US technology companies actually use the same word, chromium, in their services as the name of the company or a product name. And we were kind of really like that. And my former partner called me one night and said, you know what, let's not use chromium. What if we just did Cr24, the atomic symbol for chromium, and it's shorter? So I was like, all right, that sounds cool. That's how Cr24 came to be. And the name Aegis comes from Greek mythology. It's like the god of shield, and that's another protective idea. So that's where Aegis comes from, the name Aegis.
I adore those names. They're very clever and they're very suitable.
Yes, yes. There's definitely a marketing spin or interwoven in there. I don't get
Mm,
into it much, but from time to time, people do ask me about how'd you come up with CR24? What is that? A lot of people don't even know it's the atomic symbol for chromium. But anyway,
yeah. I'm surprised I recognise that, to be honest. Science was not my favourite subject.
I know it's kind of a weird thing, right? Sometimes I have had like, why would you're a technology, fintech, banking guy. What's with the whole science periodic table thing going on? I don't know, man. It's just, that's just the way it happened. I don't,
I like it. I think it's really cool.
thank you.
So, for anyone who isn't familiar with financial services who is listening to this podcast, can you walk us through what digital marketing compliance review actually looks like for a bank and why it's such a high stakes problem?
Sure. So right now, the way that a particularly large banks or most banks go through the process, it's usually a 2 to 4 week process. It's usually a lot of bodies and chairs. So anywhere from 5 to 15 people, depending on the size of the department or the bank, get together and go through what's called a QA process, quality assurance process, or a UAT process, user acceptance testing. So what they're doing is basically ensuring that the content that's about to be released to the public is in fact accurate and it works and looks correct. All right, disclosures. Think about disclosures, T's and C's, privacy statements, interest rates, APYs, APRs, even just their own logo and their own colors and the marketing as well, not just the financial hard or financial information. So they go through a very rigorous process over 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how much content is being distributed online. And they
Mm.
go through this UAT cycle where they have Excel sheets and they go through literally test scripts, hundreds, if not thousands of test scripts. If they click on the homepage, does the homepage show up? I'm looking at the privacy statement. Is it updated correctly, word for word for word? Like people are literally doing what's called manual stare and compare, making sure that every word, every number, every piece of content is exactly the way that it should be. And they do this in what's called a staging environment or a UAT environment. This is internal to the bank. The public cannot see. And they go through this process and look for defects and bugs. And they eventually, obviously, they find bugs and defects and they go through a rinse and repeat. So they give it to development, they give it back. They retest it, make sure it's right. So they kind of work the list down to zero. And then when it looks good and everybody agrees that the testing is complete and everything looks the way it should be, they figuratively hit a button and it gets promoted to production. Now it's live out on the web. So to their customers that are already customers of theirs and to the general public. And then for the last time, they go back in what's called a regression test. And these same group of people will go back into the URLs that are in the production live environment and go through the same test scripts again to make sure that what they saw in a staging environment internal matches what now is live to the public. And you'd be surprised, even then, there's still some errors. And they go back through the process again, called a hot fix, to make sure that that's accurate. So you can imagine it's very resource heavy. It's very time sensitive, right? It's very error prone and it's very expensive. And because it's manual, right? So you have a lot of bodies and chairs. You have people that forget things or they didn't see the one link or forgot to click the link or didn't look at the APR or the APY yield that was in the drop down navigation on some, 3 pages deep on the site or things like that happen and that little things, but those little things matter, right? That you can die death of a thousand cuts with financial services. And the fact of why that's so important is so incredibly important because financial services is extremely highly regulated all over the globe, especially in the US, especially after the 08, 09, crash, right? So you got a lot of government watchdog bodies out there. You got a lot of state regulations. So, banks do what they can. They move slower from a marketing perspective to be more accurate than they would be to be fast and loose. So that just gives you a frame of the intensity that goes out. Now imagine that process with marketing, right? And you have 10, 20, 30 million customers that you're marketing to all the time. Lots of different products, lots of different segments. Every segment's got, 10 or 15 test cells inside of it, A/B split test, looking to try to move the needle in certain ways, looking for KPIs. It sounds great from a marketing strategy perspective, but operationally it's very hard to keep straight. And that's where errors happen all the time. You have so much complexity across what I just mentioned. It's very typical for the wrong media code or the wrong program ID to get assigned to the wrong customer base. And this group of 50,000 customers sees the wrong interest rate or the wrong disclosure by accident. that's a problem for a bank, right? Because the government can get involved, right? Or state regulators. So because it's highly regulated industry, accuracy matters very, 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 very much for financial institutions and banks. So it's a very rigorous process.
Absolutely. Is there a result or transformation with one of your clients that you're especially proud of?
Yeah, so one client, and we work with some of the top U.S. banks and global banks, but primarily here in the U.S. We have patents domestically and internationally, but we deal mainly in North America between Canada and the U.S. One client in particular adopted our software, got onboarded, and basically they were at 0% automation. They were in this manual team of 12 or 15 people that was doing this on a daily basis. That's what their job was. And we took them in a matter of 4 months, got them to over 74% automation for all the test cases that they were doing online. So you can imagine the scale. This is one of the largest banks, right? Actually, and it was in their acquisition department. So they had a bunch of partner websites that the bank did not own and control. And this group of people would go out either once a year or twice a year, depending if it was a high risk partner or a low risk partner, to determine if all that content on their partner sites is accurate and it's functioning and going where it's supposed to go and all of that. And in between that, they have what's called limited time offers, promotional things going on. There were their partners would put banners and information up for a certain period of time over the summer, like, for a 3-month promotion. And then the partner was supposed to pull that down. Again, the bank doesn't control this operationally because it's not their website, it's not their company. These are all their partners where they're distributing content. So they try to work with them as a team, so to speak, right? But there were many times where that was very inefficient. There were errors that were not found for, weeks or sometimes a month on end, where the partner didn't pull down the program at the right time, which cost the bank, quite a bit. Because if it's out there to the public, the bank has to honor it, right? So if it's a promotional offer, let's use Citibank, for example, or the American Airlines credit card. So they put an offer out on American Airlines' website. So they go out to the customers, see that, and apply for it. And instead of, I don't know, the normal might be 40,000 miles to sign up for the credit card, American Airlines Citibank credit card. Maybe it's 60,000 because they're testing it to see what kind of halo effect and what the pool would be in the metrics. But if American Airlines leaves that out there for longer than it's supposed to be, then the bank has to honor that, right? Rewards and cash back and all those things, those are $1 million line items on P&L and budgets inside banks. That's not free, right? So that causes a lot of problems. That's just one example. But we were able to get these guys up and running. So with our software, sorry to bring this full circle, and inside of 4 months, we got them to about 74, 73% automation. So now they were looking at all their partner websites, which is, thousands of URLs, tens of thousands of pieces of content. And they were looking at it every day because of our software. At the scale that they get, they just simply couldn't do it with man. I mean, they'd have to hire like hundreds and hundreds of people to do that. So, and that's our whole thing, right? We're not putting people out of jobs, right? This is about the people that are doing this grunt work and all the management and the ROI, higher ROI things around it. Let newer technology and automation technology do the grunt work for you, right? So you don't need to do all that stare and compare and do all the check boxes and screenshots and look at email threads. And, we've automated all that. So what that bank was doing over that period of time of looking at partners once or twice a year, now they look at everything that they have every day and get weekly reports on it. So that's one thing we're very proud of. And we continue to work with that client because they have different scenarios and testings, the way that they go about it from an online perspective, and new features that we're coming out with, like mobile and things like that, native or responsive, so that they can include more test cases inside for the software to do for them in an automated way. We'd like to get them hopefully to about 85%, I'm hoping, by this year end. So we'll see how that goes. But that was pretty impressive because most banks, they're very large, right? And they got a lot of things going on. So to pull that off inside of a 3 or 4 month window to get to that much, 0 to 70 something percent was pretty radical and game changing for them for sure.
Incredible results. So, what's the biggest objection or fear that you hear from banks about putting AI into compliance review, and how would you answer it?
So this is a very hot topic. I mean, I go to a lot of the conferences for banking and I'm on the speaking circuit and panels and so forth. And, there's a split dichotomy of thought here, right? About AI is so powerful. And then there's the other side of it. Well, it's scary, right? What if it goes rogue? So we hear that a lot, especially with compliance, right? Because humans need to be in the loop. Absolutely. And we are very much for that. And we've designed our product to be that way. It doesn't solve that, but it does take the grunt work, so to speak, all the labor intensive manual labor out of compliance or checking or QR reviews and things like that. So it's interesting. It really depends on the area of the bank that you hear. From a marketing perspective, pure strategy and outward the front side of marketing, those folks love AI, right? Because you're getting hyper personalization and you can do a lot more, a lot faster. Again, the operation part of the marketing team, marketing operations, has to try to keep up with that. And it's very difficult. So I think when people think about AI, it's not like you install AI on top of a bank and now it's more efficient, right? I mean, these banks are multi 100 billion, if not trillion-dollar enterprises. There's just the credit card division of like Citibank is, $400 billion enterprise, right? So these are very large institutions. So looking for specific use cases for AI, I think makes the most sense, right? Don't just use AI to say you have AI. And there's a lot of pressure just to use AI. But there is that fear that what if it goes rogue? It does, from agentic AI does things that we didn't want it to do. But I think if you have the right environment, the right workflows, and the right kind of guardrails of what you need to adopt AI specifically for success, and you can show some good ROI and some good metrics there.
Absolutely. One thing that comes up a lot with banks partnering with fintechs is fear of being left unsupported once they've adopted the technology. How do you make sure that doesn't happen with CR24?
Very simply, so we don't just we license our technology, but that doesn't stop there. We always package our offering with a support package as well. So typically the term of our contract with the client is either 3 years or 4 years. And we also have a service contract, a support contract that goes along with that. So, we have our own internal call centers and to answer questions and help with this, that, and the other ticketing systems and all of that. We also have dedicated IT staff, tech staff that we have mirrored environments for our clients for their production as how we move, new benefits and features and new things to them. And we're constantly doing bug fixes and, patchwork and things like that as things come up. So we definitely stay with the client. So not only do we have an onboarding process with them, we don't just drop the software at the door and say, hey, good luck, right? So we have a dedicated team that's really at the enterprise level, and this is very typical at an enterprise level, which is we're set up to do, is make sure that they have an onboarding team, right? There's account management in place. There's an onboarding team to work with their people, making sure that they're getting set up on the software, that they're, dialing it in, getting the reports right, and everything that they need to have it done the way that they want it to be done. And then we stay with them. We have monthly meetings. Mostly we call them QBRs, quarterly business reviews with them. So we're constantly trying to get them from zero, right? Get them up on plane for what they were doing manually. Now they're using the software to do it in an automated way. And it's funny, the more you start to use automation, the more you start to see how powerful it is. And you want to grow that, right? So we hit the initial pain point like a bullseye, and then we hit the rings kind of start to go outside of that as well and help them automate in other areas. And that's typically very normal. So, the onboarding process with the client that I explained earlier, in that 4 month, I think we got them up and running in about 2 months. Software was set up, good with their IT and everything's good. Then we worked with them for a couple months and got them up on plane. And then, they really throttled in that last month and a half to that 4 month mark to get to 70%. And again, like that was last year. And now hopefully this year, we're going to get them closer to, mid 80s, 85%. So we do have a support structure that goes along with the product itself.
Perfect. And going back to AI again, there's a lot of anxiety generally around AI replacing people. How does that show up in your world and how do you think about it?
It's funny you say that. I hear this everywhere I go about AI replacing people. And this always happens when new technologies come out. I've seen I'm old now, right? I have no hair and I've got the hair I do have is turning gray. So I've been around through a lot of these things these technology innovations that kind of hit these certain sectors. And I've never seen anything like AI before as far as the accelerated path. But yes, a lot of people are very worried about AI. And we do not go out and say, hey, our software can do what 25 of your people do. So buy our software and fire everybody. That's typically not what happens. So our software does all the grunt work, like I mentioned before. It scans that entire digital ecosystem in under 10 seconds across all devices and browsers and operating systems, gives them their answer. So now they're in the business of they see what is going on out there. Do they need to make changes or not? Are the changes that are happening intended changes or are they problems? And determine that and then take the resolution path that needs to be taken. So humans always definitely need to be in the loop, especially in a compliance side inside of financial services as well. So we are big proponents of keep humans in the loop. What we do is just put the people that operate our software that were doing this manually, now they operate our software to do it for them. And now they can be put back into more strategic, higher ROI task, which is probably why the bank hired them to begin with, not to stop what they were doing on a Friday afternoon and go through 250 test cases and screenshots and fill out reports and put them in a binder, right? That's, that was kind of like, it's just part of the job that they have to do. But now our software does that for them. So hopefully we release the intellectual intelligence and around humans so that humans can get back to, because, the more strategic work, the larger projects that have huge ROIs for the bank so they can deliver value to their customers and not worry about all the manual labor kind of grunt work that, machines can do in seconds at 100% accuracy. It's just a very good fit actually between, what a human can do, leveraging the automation and the power of technology. So definitely pro-human and human in the loop idea at our company for sure.
Absolutely. And you built CR24's core technology years before AI became the industry buzzword that it is today.
Yes,
So,
we did.
what was that journey like, and how is building something similar different now?
How was that journey like? That journey was painful, right? So I came from the space, right? I felt pretty confident that I could, like, I'm not a technical person. I have some, very smart technical leadership around me. I'm more of a business person, right? So, if example, if metaphor, right? If a fork needs to talk to the toaster, technically, I have no idea how to make that happen, but I can tell you the business reason why it needs to happen. So, I was very confident when I went out to build this thing. Oh, I got this. This is no problem. And we went on the East Coast. We went out to the West Coast. We finally partnered with a company on the West Coast that was able to get us to a certain point to prototype that showed that it would work. And then we actually offshored it to actually stroke the keys and then brought it back onshore. But during that entire process, over what, 3.5 years building the product, I was told no, like this can't be done. Like it just, the technology doesn't exist, which is why we have patents on it because it didn't exist. So it was very hard we had to create our own custom code, and it's interwoven with a lot of other existing technologies because it can't be completely custom going into financial services. I mean, they just don't like that. It needs to be known, validated, technology that they use. So we do have custom code that stitches some things together, and our patents lie obviously in our code, our custom code. But everybody said, Josh, it's going to take you twice as long and twice the amount of money than you think. And I'm like, there's no way. I know how to do this. And boy, were they right. It was like 3 times as long and 5 times the money. um, how that differs from today? Yeah, I know. I could probably, with AI and the technology that exists now versus then, I could probably do it in a fraction of the time and definitely a fraction of the cost to do what we did. So there's a lot of advantages with the technology today. But yeah, so hard road then, probably a lot easier road now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, you've got a new mid-market product on the way. What's the vision behind bringing this technology to smaller banks and credit unions?
Yeah, so I mean, our bread and butter has been in very large enterprise banks, specifically in the US. And, one of the things now that we've got our feet under us that I want to do is I don't think this technology should be just for the, giant elite big banks, right? I mean, all banks have to deal with state regulations and federal regulations. They get governed and ruled upon in the same way. That's the same laws, very, very much the same laws. So why not have the ability of the sophistication of the technology that the big boys can enjoy at their level and get that down to a small credit union that might be out in Florida that only has 5 branches? They still got customers. They still got products, financial products. They're still online. Their customers probably have an app and they're still going to online banking to pay their bills and have a credit card or has a rewards program and all that stuff. It's just at a massively bigger scale at somewhere like Wells Fargo or Bank of America, of course. But ideally, conceptually, it's the same. So, kind of free for the people, right? Let's get it out there to all these other banks because we know that's a pain point and we can help them with that automation, that technology. So yes, we are coming out with a new product. It's a new version of the product, right? It's the same core technology with the same value points. It's just not the unlimited buffet that the giant banking guys enjoy because they need that and they pay for that. A smaller institution or credit union would never pay that enterprise price, nor do they need all that kind of bandwidth, so to speak. So yeah, we're excited to open that market up later this year and offer it out to much smaller mid-market banks and credit unions and other financial institutions.
Awesome. So, for the people that want to learn more about CR24, where's the best place for them to go?
If you want to find out about Cr24, you can go to online at www.cr24usa.com, or you could go to LinkedIn and find me, Josh Kelso. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Feel free to DM me and or reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation.
Perfect. And I will drop those contact details below the video as well. Josh, this has been a really insightful conversation, especially hearing how compliance technology and AI come together to solve a problem most people never even think about. Thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it. And to our audience, thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you again next time.